I'd like to welcome everybody to today's Action for Fire Safety Justice National Day of Action. My name is Moyra Samuels. I'm one of the Grenfell impacted community. We have an exciting day of speakers as well as live streams from Action right across the country. It is now approaching 4.5 years after the atrocity of the Grenfell Tower fire. The inquiry has gone into its second phase, and there is the end at the moment of, I think it's the third module. It's been particularly grueling for the bereaved and survivors module to hear the evidence from module 2 and module 3. In module 2, we've heard the millet refer to some of the corporates like Kingspan and Iconic as crooks turned killers. And this week, there was a focus on safety and what happened to those residents who died on the night of the fire. And the need for change in a whole range of services from the LFB, a need for change from the local authority, from the TMO, and a change in regulations. The consequences of the atrocity of the fire, what we refer to as a social massacre or a social murder, has meant that actually there are thousands of residents across the country who today live in fear of bankruptcy, in fear of a fire, another Grenfell, and in fear of not being able to move on with their lives. So we also facing a government that refuses, where it does not have the political will, and it could have the political will if it wanted to, if it wasn't putting the needs of developers instead of the needs of the residents as a priority. We could have that fear taken away. So today is the day where actually the leaseholders say enough is enough. They cannot continue to live in this way because they are living, in my opinion, they are living a slow death. They're waking up with fear every day. And today, from the Grenfell impacted community, I'd like to send greetings of solidarity and to say that this should never happen to anyone else. That actually we want the fear that they live in to stop. We want the developers and the government to take responsibility for removing any dangerous cladding or insulation and repairing any other fire risks in their building. So welcome everybody today to Can't Pay, Won't Pay. Our first speaker today is one of the founder members of this campaign, Chloe. Chloe Watts, so over to you, Chloe.
Thank you so much, Moyra, and huge solidarity to all in the Grenfell community. And thank you so much for supporting us. We've got a huge amount of support in this campaign, and we've got a huge amount of potential as well. There are so many people affected, over 1 million leaseholders and tenants trapped in unsafe buildings. And there's a real potential if we all pull together to really affect change. So thank you so much for everyone that's engaging with the campaign, everyone that's actively participating in it, because I really believe that together we will make a difference. Massive thanks to Claddag, who we'll be hearing from later. As we know, disabled people are much more at risk of in case the fire breaks out. And Homes for All, who have been supported throughout with their protest knowledge, and obviously we are campaigning on related issues. Bristol Cladding Action Group and Ipswich Gladiators for coming out today in the tumultuous weather. And I think the weather just only underscores the dedication of all the protesters today. Tower Hamlets Justice for Leaseholders, Andale cladding scandal, of course, and polluter pays bill for continuing and tireless efforts to effect change through the parliamentary methods, and the Fire Brigade Union for standing with us and demanding change as well. And of course, the Grenfell community, for where this whole awful situation began. And a special thanks to all the dedicated protesters, some of who are standing out in the rain right now. And, you know, everyone that's standing out there today really understands that no one, this is really important, no one is coming to save us here. And I think that's really clear from the budget that's been announced today. Rishi Sunak repeating his £5 billion. Yeah, same old tired soundbite. This isn't a new $5 billion. This is a $5 billion that Andale cladding scandal had negotiated with him very hard months and months ago that was announced. And meanwhile, where's the relief for leaseholders who are being faced with unaffordable bills? You know, people facing bankruptcy, facing eviction. Every day we see a new bill being announced, 5 figures, 6 figures, landing on an individual's doorstep and to be paid within 28 days. It's just completely unacceptable. And there's no emergency relief for those people. So, you know, what happens? People are buckling under the strain. There's a triple threat. It's a triple threat of the, you know, the ongoing stress of the pandemic, which has been difficult for everyone. These eye-watering bills landing on people's doorsteps and being trapped in these unsafe homes as well. And some people just, we're simply not able to cope, some people. Devastatingly, it was reported in the news that one leaseholder, one young man, took his own life because he just couldn't cope with all of those stresses and strains and the bills that he received. And it just proves that this is an emergency. We really need to act now, and we need to act together. And we do have the power as people to escalate this situation. What we need to do is join together, join the campaign and come out onto the streets and really make our voices heard, because 1 million people together, it's truly a powerful unit. So we really need to do that. So yeah, just briefly, because I think I've probably been talking for quite a long time, Potted History of Action for Fire Safety Justice, which is the group that I represent. It's a grassroots protest movement.
Okay, Chloe, you probably have 30 seconds to sum up before we go live.
Thank you. Okay, cool. So we're a grassroots movement. We're open to everyone. Inclusivity is one of our main values, and we would just really like for everyone to get out on the streets and join us and fight for our rights.
Thank you so much, Chloe. And talking about getting on the streets, we are now in London.
Hello, can you guys hear? Can you hear me? Sorry, my headphones, I can't hear you particularly well, but I can see everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chloe. Thank you very much for that, Moyra. As you can see, we are here in City Hall. It's behind us, this Tower Bridge here. We are out here outside City Hall protesting, asking London Assembly to do more. You can hear everyone behind me chanting, I hope. We've got many speakers here today, so we'd like to thank all of our speakers, including Justice for Grenfell, the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrat, Greater London Assembly. Thank you very much to Hina, who's already spoken, and James McCash, who's already spoken. We've got the Fire Brigades Union. We've got Gareth from the Fire Brigades Union, who's also going to be speaking for us today. And it's so important to have these voices out here with us, saying exactly what we need to be said, what needs to be said in the halls of government. This issue needs to be sorted now. We are ordinary people dealing with extraordinary circumstances. Grenfell was one tragic example of what can happen when this all goes wrong. There are thousands of people across the country living in the same fear, living with the fear of bills. We're not talking just about financial difficulties here, and not just talking about financial pain. We're talking about emotional pain. We're talking about mental pain, and all of that needs to be taken into account, because this is an issue that is far beyond anything the government is thinking about right now. We're calling for the government to act. We're calling for help from the developers, who, as you can hear, we all think should be paying. We're calling for help from London City Hall, from city halls up and down the country. And we need that help now. These bills are happening now. The mental strain is happening now. People cannot be expected to go on like this. And we encourage everyone watching to write to your MPs, get out on the streets and campaign. Thank you very much for everyone for supporting us. And thank you very much everyone for coming out here and across the country today.
Thank you very much. It sounds like an amazingly powerful protest out there. Are we going to be able to hear from Gareth now, or will we hear from him later?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear you that, sorry.
Are we going to be able to hear from Gareth now, or will we hear from Gareth later?
Gareth is speaking here. I'm not sure if Gareth is speaking on the stream. He's going to be speaking in a bit. We have Yvette coming up from Justice for Grenfell, who's going to be speaking to the crowd in a moment. But they're just getting mic'd up at the moment.
Okay, all the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody.
Protest. We have not been able to hear from Grenfell United speaker. As I said in my introduction, it's been a very, very tough week for the bereaved and survivors, with the closing statement and with reminders and pointers at the lack of fire safety that led to the loss of the lives of their loved ones. So apologies from Karim Mussilhy, who has not been able to attend. But we are going to now go to protest 2 in Strasbourg at the European Court of Human Rights. So welcome, Richard Blackmore, with his sign.
Hello.
Behind me.
We have a message for you. Are you ready?
We're ready?
Okay, let's go. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I certainly think that we are towards justice, and to be reminded of another quote from Martin Luther, that justice delayed is justice denied. And we all stand with you. I'm glad the rain has held out. What an amazing protest there. There are some comments in the chat which I'd like to read out, which are in full support of your protest, Richard, and everybody's protests. Boris Taratine says unaffordable bills and unnecessary work in many cases. He have examples ready. shall we investigate fraud associated with these actions? And Claire Marina Houghton says, well done, Reese, and all at the London protest. And somebody else says, sorry, I can't attend in person, but I'm fully behind this movement. This legislation has been poorly thought out, and the government has callously allowed all costs to be passed on to leaseholders. So thank you very much. We are now going to move on to our next live protest, which is at St Albans. Welcome, St Albans, Linden Homes.
Hello, I hope you can hear as well, because there's a bit of traffic and a bit of wind. So hopefully you can hear. We're actually in Stopford in Hertfordshire. Our block is in St Albans, and obviously we're affected like a lot of other people. It's been really good, actually. We've been in Stopford. It's a small Linden development. The people in the sales offices have been out, spoken to us. And actually, what was interesting, we're not even aware of the problems or issues that are going on nationally. So it's been really good. They've reported it to head office that we're here. So again, even though it's a small protest of the two of us with our banners, it's making an impact. It's having a real impact because our block in St Albans has got missing fire breaks. The cladding needs replacing, and we're looking at a bill potentially of 160,000 a flat was our initial estimate if we don't get any support from the BSF funding. And that is held up due to issues with the contract and our managing agents not signing the contract. So it's been a great day. Luckily, the rain has kept away, but the people here have been really friendly, really nice. We've had drivers stop because we're by the main road, ask us what's going on. So I think it's getting the message out and getting the message out beyond the cities where a lot of this is happening. But Linden Homes was our developer. They're no more. They're owned by Bovis and part of Vistry Group. So we're here to make a point to Linden because most of the big developers are aware, but the smaller developers like Linden, we feel so far have not had the pressure put on them. So we're trying to put pressure on them to do the right thing. And like I say, it's interesting. The salespeople come out and talked about all their fire awards, their awards for development. And I think they were quite shocked when we pointed out that our development won quite a few prestigious awards by NHBC and Linden. So, yes, it's really getting the message out there. So we're not got chanted because there's just two of us here today.
But yeah, as I say, it's been really good to generally raise awareness. I mean, the fact that the developers here didn't even know about the national issues, let alone the regional issues. So yeah, it's just good to try and put that pressure on. So yes, I mean, as Paul said, it's going to be reported back to head office. So hopefully going to put some pressure on. I mean, the fact is that our development was built in breach of regulations without any fire breaks. We've also got flammable cladding. We've got the same insulation they had at Grenfell, K15, which we obviously know is highly flammable. And Linden Homes have offered absolutely nothing to help us. As Paul said, we're now facing bills of between £150,000 and £200,000 each. Nobody's got that sort of money, and more to the point, why should we have to pay? This is another reason why we're happy to want to put the polluter pays amendments into the building safety bill, because it does offer a way out. It makes sure that those responsible do pay up, and not the innocent parties, not the innocent leaseholders who bought their properties in good faith, who have missold their properties, and who are now facing bankruptcy and worse.
Yeah, so and just to find, because I know the wind's a bit blowy, and I think hopefully what this shows as well, the power of some small demonstrations outside sales offices to get the message out there, as well as the big demonstrations you got down in London and other parts of the country. So, you know, hopefully it gives confidence that even small little demos, 2 people standing by the road with engaged with a number of people makes a difference and gets the message out there, because we were quite gobsmacked that a lot of people had never even heard of this scandal or the crisis, yet it's had so much national coverage. So from Stopford in Hertfordshire, good luck to all the rest of the protests around the country, and hopefully the government will listen and do something about it.
Thank you, Stopford, and well done. I think that actually your size doesn't matter. I am reminded of Greta, who stood single-handedly outside her school for, you know, months and months, and look at the size of the campaign against the climate crisis. So I think protest works, and I think no matter how small your protest, it's really significant. If people can share this, our webinar, and keep commenting, we're going to have a way of actually getting this out to all the people, Paul, that you mentioned, who may be unaware of actually the absolute iniquity, the injustice of this crisis, that you bought in good faith, and you've been basically been robbed. That's what's happened. So solidarity to all of you, and let's keep fighting. Let's keep our fight on the streets, and let's keep our fight unified. So thank you very much. Our next speaker is going to be Jenny Garrett from End Our Cladding Scandal in Sheffield. Welcome, Jenny.
Hi, thanks, Moyra. Yeah, so I kind of just wanted to give a bit of an update on what's going on here in Sheffield. So I'm an affected leaseholder. I'm in my building now. We formed myself and another group of affected leaseholders formed the Sheffield Cladding Action Group. And then the Sheffield Cladding Action Group is one of the residents groups that makes up the End Our Cladding Scandal campaign. So, I mean, in terms of Sheffield, we are progressing through the sort of process of the building safety crisis, and a lot of buildings now that we're sort of in touch with are having responses back from the Building Safety Fund. Most of them that are part of the Sheffield Cladding Action Group have had some sort of acknowledgement or approval for funding. But what's the real problem that is now coming out, particularly for the buildings here, is that the funding that the Building Safety Fund can grant is only partial. So there are buildings here where they can have certain types of cladding removed, but not others. There are buildings where there's unsafe insulation behind brick, but the Building Safety Fund will not cover that because it's not classed as a cladding system. And so I think really what the crisis here, particularly in this city, has moved forward into now is a sort of, I guess, a sticking plaster situation. So the Building Safety Fund is doing some of the work, and we are, of course, very grateful for that. But none of the buildings here in Sheffield are having full remediation under the Building Safety Fund grant. And, Boris Johnson has stood up several times, as have many of his ministers, and said that leaseholders should not have to pay for this crisis because he recognises it's not our fault. I think something else that's important to keep raising, and I know Moyra mentioned it in the opening statements, that we're having to fund waking watches, we're having to fund extortionate increases in insurance costs. There are buildings in Sheffield that aren't even insured at all because we just can't get insurance under this situation. And so I think it's really important to make sure that the government realise that they have not solved this problem just by sticking £5 billion into the pot. And of course, we recognise that is a huge amount of money, but it just isn't enough to solve the problem. I think a lot of people that are listening today would realise that the same things we're experiencing in Sheffield are part of the wider problem. And I think something that particularly affected me a few weeks ago was that our local ITV group put a question to Boris Johnson, basically to say, Jenny's in this situation in her building, what should she do? And Boris Johnson, with his usual waffle, sort of blabbed on about nothing, and then at the end of it said that he believes that a lot of us in this situation are unnecessarily anxious about the fire safety of our homes. And I think personally that is not only offensive, but it just shows how utterly Boris Johnson just doesn't understand the situation. And if the Prime Minister of our country doesn't understand what's going on, then that is a real problem, because we are talking about extortionate bills, extortionate insurance costs, waking up and worrying that the building's going to be set on fire. If the fire alarm goes off as a test here, everyone's racing to get out and worrying that it's going to be the next big catastrophe. And for our Prime Minister to say that we are unnecessarily anxious about that, I think is absolutely ridiculous. So that's a little bit of an update from Sheffield. In terms of the End Our Cladding scandal, we are pressing forward. The group was able to engage with the new Secretary of State, Michael Gove, which was really positive. He's not committed to anything yet, but certainly listened to what the campaign members were saying and has committed to regular meetings, which is a really positive step in the right direction. And I think at the moment, the other sort of major focus for the campaign is trying to make sure that we can get some amendments to the current building safety bill, which at the moment will not be doing what we need it to do to make sure that we're not all going bankrupt from this situation. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jenny, and solidarity from all of us. I'm mindful that actually Western Homes in Barking is anxious to come through. So I'll go over to Barking.
Hello, can you hear us?
We can.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Yes, we're here in Barking outside of Western Homes. There's quite a few of us. I don't know if you can see on the camera, there's a good few of us. And we have already engaged with several new buyers, given out lots of leaflets, and we're really quite pleased about that. We've also been offered a cup of coffee by the Western Homes sales staff. So it's all very nice and pleasant here in the sunshine, but we're here for a serious reason, and that is that Western Homes built Morello Quarter in Basildon, and how do we know they're not doing the same here in Barking with uncompliant material, no fire barriers. They're not helping with cladding, they're not helping with our balconies. And we're a set of people in Morello Quarter that are being stung really, really heavily by all of our bills, 400% increase in our insurance, and our service monies as well has really rocketed up. And as per other speakers today, the mental health strain is enormous, as well as the financial strain, and the fact that we can't move on in our lives. Western Homes have been ignoring us, and we are going to be, asking Western Homes to, pay and actually do the moral thing for us and their leaseholders. So we're chanting now that we want cladding down, and that's, I think that's us now. Thank you very much. Back to you then, Moyra. Are you there?
Thank you, Jane, from Barking, and well done to all of you. Take the cladding down. Can I just read out a few comments before I go on to Matt Rack, our next speaker? There's a comment from Yasmin Sheikh, who says the government should put polluter pay bills should support polluter pay bills irrespective of how much profits they are making, as we are leaseholders and should not be penalised where the government supported Help to Buy to help first-time buyers like us. And another comment from Just for Visit says management companies, example R&R, must be investigated. Freeholders that are in Panama properties, example Gemstock, should be investigated too. So yes, we're hearing lots of comments about corruption, certainly, and we could say that about about the construction industry, who put profits before people. So welcome Matt Rack, who's the General Secretary of the Fire Brigade Union and has been very supportive of fire safety. Thank you, Matt. Over to you. You need to unmute, Matt. Matt, you need to unmute yourself. Can you unmute yourself, Matt? Wonderful, we can hear you now. We can hear you, Matt.
Hi, Moyra. Good morning, everyone, and solidarity from the Fire Brigades Union. I am showing as unmuted. Can you not hear me?
I can. We can hear you, Matt.
Let's
we
try.
can hear you, Matt. You've muted yourself somehow or other. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Is that right now?
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. We can hear you now.
Solidarity from the Fire Brigades Union. Apologies for the technology here. I'm travelling and I'm using my mobile phone. It's fantastic to see people around the country protesting in demanding building safety. This is an issue that we've campaigned on as a union for many years. We highlighted the risks of external cladding systems as long ago as 1999. We took those arguments into Parliament, and it is absolutely shocking that we live in a system that allows developers, builders, manufacturers, firstly to produce products which are unsafe, and then to put them on buildings and expect people to live in them. And we have a system where the regulations have allowed that, where the system of inspection and enforcement has allowed that to happen. It is entirely demonstrates how profit has driven these decisions, and decisions of government as well. And we therefore stand in full support of the tenants and residents and leaseholders campaigning on this issue all across the country. You have the full support of firefighters and the fire brigades union, and whatever we can do to help, we'll do that. So you have our solidarity, and good luck with all the protests today.
Thank you so much, Matt. Certainly fire safety is important, not just to the residents, but also to all firefighters who are expected to go out and fight these dangerous fires. So thank you so much. We have other comments, more comments in the chat. Feroz says, Help to Buy should take responsibility where they takes the profit when we sell our property. Oh, with I think Upton Park is wanting to come in, so I'll just finish that comment.
Hello, it's very noisy here. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Justice. So we're all here and we're all very noisy and trying to drum up as much enthusiasm as we can. Lots of passers-by have wanted to take part as well, which has been really good. But we're going to keep going, and you know, just the mental health impact that Barrett have put on us is unreal, as well as like all the financial, you know, bills from £20,000 to £100,000.
Barrett equals bankruptcy. 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 Barrett equals Barrett's built fire traps. Families left to burn. Barrett's built
fire traps. Families left to burn. Barrett's built fire traps. Families left to burn. Barrett's built fire traps. Families left to burn. Barrett's built fire traps. Families left to burn. Barrett's built fire traps. Families left to burn. Barrett's built fire traps. Families left to burn. Barrett's built fire traps. Families left to burn.
Barrett's built fire traps. Families left to burn. Barrett's built fire traps. Families left to burn.
Barrett's built fire traps. Families. Barrett equals bankruptcy. 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 Barrett equals bankruptcy.
Barrett equals bankruptcy. Barrett equals bankruptcy.
Thank you, Upton Park. What a wonderful, lively protest, and certainly those slogans. Oh, there's a character in the background.
Very much so. This is Danielle.
When do we want it? Now. What do we want?
Sorry, lots of noise over here.
Now. What do we want?
Okay.
What do we want? Justice.
Upton Park, if there's anything else you'd like to say before I hand over to our next speaker. So we still have a minute left.
When do we want it? Now.
We want to make Barrett's pay for the bad homes they build.
Bankruptcy. Barrett equals bankruptcy. Barrett equals bankruptcy.
Thanks very much.
Okay, so I think that was a lively demonstration from Upton Park, certainly pointing at all the issues that are so significant You know, the question of, I was moved by Jenny's comment on, you know, Johnson saying that they were unnecessarily anxious, and it reminded me of Rees-Mogg saying that actually the residents of Grenfell didn't use common sense in trying to escape. You know, the Tories seem to be this government seems to be incredibly inhuman or unempathetic. So I think that our protests have to make them aware of the fact that we are saying enough is enough, and people can't pay and they won't pay. So I'd like to welcome our next speaker, who is Wolf Sullivan, who is the Race Equality Officer of the TUC. Welcome, Wolf.
Thanks, Moyra. And I want to first off start off by giving my solidarity and solidarity from trade unionists for all those people who are out there protesting today. I think, as Moyra said, the current government doesn't care about ordinary working people. People are facing an incredibly dangerous situation in terms of what's happening with building safety in this country. Grenfell should have been a wake-up call for everybody. But 3 years on, we still see an inquiry dragging on, which is refusing to learn the lessons from what happened in that fire. And the main lesson for me is that actually homes cannot just be treated as a monetary asset. Actually, homes are for people to live in. And what we've got is got ourselves into a situation in this country, whereas what has happened with the housing market is absolutely corrupt, where substandard homes are being put up, where leaseholding arrangements are in place, which are just purely about exploiting and extracting money from people, and where actually we find ourselves in a situation now where even new buildings that are being put up are built in such a way that that they're only going to last for a number of years, and that tenants will eventually have to pay yet more to live in a secure environment. So we have a challenge. And I think today is a really good start to that challenge in terms of bringing the campaigns that there are about cladding, around building safety, around what's happened at Grenfell together. And we need to build on that. And certainly, you know, I'm committed to trying to ensure that the trade union movement take issue of housing more seriously, make it much more part of what we campaign around, because it's no good us just talking about what happens in the workplace. We have to also talk about what happens in terms of where members and people that are part of our movement go home to, and ensure that they can go home to a place where actually they can afford, and which is safe, and which is a good environment for them and their families.
Thank you so much, Wolf. Certainly important points you raise about the fact that workers, you know, don't just have rights at work, but they also have rights to live somewhere safe and somewhere decent. And I was noticing a comment somebody made on Twitter about the situation the leaseholders is in, saying that you had fewer rights than anyone who was returning a dysfunctional ballpoint pen, which was actually incredibly shocking. You know, that this is something that is so basic and so necessary for all of us to live, you know, decent lives. So thank you, everyone. Please, can people remember to share, you know, if you're watching, to share, so that actually we do get all of the information out. We get the wonderful protests that are happening today out, so that everybody is much more aware, and we can actually build this movement against for fire safety. So I'd like to welcome, I'd like to welcome, if it's time, our next protest, if they're there, in Ipswich Waterfront. I don't know if they are coming in, but while we wait for them to come in, I'll read a couple of comments out. Jade Abbey says, well done, guys. And there's a comment from Boris Taratin, who says all applications for government funding from the management companies must be tested for corruption, fraud, money laundering and offshore tax havens. So I think we're getting a lot of comments in about the process of applying for funding to remove and to mitigate against some of these dangerous materials or breaches of fire safety in buildings. I will, if that's all right, Tanya, perhaps go over to you while we wait for Ipswich. I'd like to welcome Tanya Murat from Homes for All. Tanya has been a stalwart and a leading driver in a number of housing campaigns, especially the one that you can see on the poster behind her, which is to take action on empty homes. So welcome, Tanya.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Moyra. I'm grateful to be here today to support this rally and Action for Fire Safety Justice, who are such an inspiring group of people dedicated to making homes safe and making developers pay. So important. As you said, my name's Tanya Murat. I'm chair of Southwark Defence Council Housing, a coordinator of Homes for All. More recently, I've been helping to organise protests on behalf of the Campaign Against Empty Homes and a new Southwark-wide group called Yes to Fair Redevelopment, who I believe were represented at the City Hall protest today, as London City Hall is in Southwark. I think the first thing to say is that since the Grenfell fire, it's become clearer to me and probably many others that there is virtually no commitment whatsoever from anyone with any power in the political establishment to solve this building crisis. Instead, what we see is a dogged determination to continue with business as usual, taking corrupt payments from developers, refusing to regulate the building industry properly, protecting the profits of the big construction companies, and letting landlords in both the private and the public sector get away with murder. Many of us suspect that we're entering a very dangerous period where we're being softened up to accept mass death as a normal part of everyday life, whether that's 72 people dead at Grenfell, whether it's the 150,000 people dead as a result of the murderous handling of the coronavirus pandemic, or the fact that it's just normal these days that thousands of older people die every year because they can't afford to heat their homes. Or there's the deaths by suicide and sometimes even malnutrition that are increasing due to benefit cuts and reductions in care services for vulnerable people, something that will only get worse after the £20 cut to universal credit. So we're told there's no money to protect people from the ravages of the market. You must just suffer in silence and don't look to the state for help. This is at the same time, of course, that the government stuffs the pockets of their friends with gold. £37 billion for a failed test and trace is just one example. And somebody mentioned the Pandora Papers and the Panama Papers. These show that people with billions to spare find it very easy to get away with not paying most of their taxes. When the government talks about not burdening the taxpayer with the costs of fixing the building safety crisis, they don't mean ordinary people like you and me. That's not the type of taxpayer they want to protect. They mean the billionaires and the millionaires who were part of causing this crisis in the first place. That's why events like this are so important. We're here to say that people's lives should come before profit. Safe homes should be a human right, and those responsible for the crisis should pay for it. It's a very simple message. This means the government and their friends in the industry should pay, not innocent leaseholders, not innocent tenants. It's worth remembering that the only way radical change was ever won, whether that's the right to vote or rights at work, was through mass movements and grassroots organising. We can't rely on politicians to solve this crisis, but we can rely on the solidarity and strength of our movement in the trade unions and in the campaigns. Homes for All aims to bring the housing movements together, amplify their voices, offer support and solidarity wherever we can. So, solidarity to everyone fighting for justice for Grenfell, fighting for fire safety. Let's keep united, let's keep fighting.
Thank you so much, Tanya. And on time, we have Ipswich. Alex Sticken, welcome to Ipswich, and over to you. Unmute. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and welcome to a very wet, windy, and cold Ipswich. A few brave souls behind me have continued to rally, and we are here today not outside a sales office, but just along the waterfront, which is described by leaders and people of Ipswich as the jewel in the crown of our town and our county. But we're wondering, how can it be described as the jewel in the crown when soon many buildings will potentially be covered in plastic wrapping while their buildings are being remediated? We're not outside a sales office because buildings here and the leaseholders affected do not have a developer that they can go to the sales office and shout and rally in front of. So we are really lost and frustrated that we're in this situation in the first place, and that we have no one that we can direct our anger towards. So it's really important that some of us have been able to come out today to really fight for this cause and to direct our anger towards the government now, and for this week specifically towards the Treasury, because it's been so clear that the Treasury hold the key to ending our cladding and building safety crisis. It really shouldn't be down to us to stand outside on a cold, wet and windy Saturday calling for this sort of action and change. But we do what we have to do, and we will keep doing this until there is that action and the change and the funding is put forward for our buildings to be remediated. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Alex, and to everyone else who's come to brave the wet and windy weather. And we will keep fighting on, and I'm sure there'll be lots of other protests that we will hear you on. I see that we have Bristol who's coming in. Welcome, John.
Hi, we're in College Green outside Bristol City Hall. You just missed a very rousing speech from one of our local councillors. We're here to increase public awareness on the cladding crisis and the outrageous situation that so many apartment owners face here in the southwest and indeed in the whole country. Homeowners and renters, first-time buyers, are expected to pay extortionate bills to cover the safety costs. Costs brought to us because developers' greed and a total lack of any government enforcement of building regulations that already exist and deem the buildings to be safe. The stress and sleepless nights of not knowing how safe our and how much our next bill is going to be is crippling. It's only a matter of time before something absolutely awful happens. We're not to blame, therefore we shouldn't pay. We cannot pay. The polluter should pay. That's a little speech that we prepared. You might want to listen. We've got one lady at the moment. She has a very, very interesting tale.
John, you may need to get a little bit closer for us.
It's a shared ownership flat.
We'll go over.
And our plan was simple, was to buy a house, settle, maybe start a family. And we are stuck. We are trapped. The Housing Association incompetence is apparent. They didn't even know what the building was made of. Can you believe that? Yes, they do. The government advice note put together in 2020 is simply undermining any reasonable approach to fire safety risk assessment, putting all in a very difficult situation. The shared ownership scheme is turning into a scam. We own 40% share of the building, and yet we are liable for 100% of the cost should there be any remedial work. Today, the Building Safety Fund, the BSF, only covers for remedial costs for building over 18 meters. Bad luck for us, we're under 18 meters. So what will happen to us when we get the bill from Sovereign and the building agent? We are at the mercy of housing associations, managing agents, and construction companies.
We're just live streaming. Is anyone anything at all that you'd like to add? We were just listening to the speech.
Hi, right in here. Hi, everyone here at the Bristol rally. We're just listening to residents speaking and telling their story. I think
it's heartbreaking.
It is absolutely heartbreaking.
Unless she's in crime.
Because we are trapped and we feel like there's nobody listening to us in government. Sorry?
No, you carry on.
We are here today in solidarity with all of you to raise awareness, to say to the government that we cannot pay, we won't fucking pay, and the only solution is for this pay bill to put this right. It's the only way for a fair amendment to the building safety bill. We hope the government listens to the people and serve justice to all affected here today. Thank you.
Well said.
Thank you so much, John, for your contribution, as well as actually being able to listen to that really moving contribution from one of the leaseholders. I think that really sums up the situation that people are in right across the country. We have a video from Georgie Hume of Claddack in Manchester, which I'd like everybody to listen to. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I'd like to thank the organisers for inviting me, to all the speakers attending, to those protesting today on this building safety crisis day of action, as well as to those attending this online event. I'm Georgie Hume. I live in Manchester and am impacted by this crisis. The legal term for me is a leaseholder. I think it's important to start by emphasising the importance of language in discussions around this scandal. The system forces it. Technical terms such as resident, tenant, leaseholder can be dehumanising and divisive. Whether it be past tragedies, the current situation, or what might happen in future, such language can hide the fact that this crisis is affecting real people and their homes, across housing tenures. The same point applies to the government's obsession of focusing purely on building height. It takes away the fact that these buildings are our homes, whatever the height, and we and our homes are greatly at risk. We're all trapped in this immeasurable scandal, going back longer than we potentially realise. We, as people, who didn't cause this, are being punished. I inherited the flat in 2016 from my late mother, who was a disabled pensioner. Before Mum died, she was bedridden for 18 months. Ironically, she chose to die at home, because that is where she felt safe. She wanted to pass that safety to me, with an accessible flat and giving me home security for life. Before I was living in social housing. When I moved in, I wasn't disabled. In time, it became inaccessible for me. I lived through major refurbishment work, including cladding installation. It wasn't easy, but I thought it was for the good of all of us. How naive that sounds now, but there was no reason to doubt. We know there is a lack of social housing, let alone accessible. My mum's intention was to stop my housing worries, but neither of us were safe in our flats. The cladding is currently being removed from my old flat. I now live in a multi-height building that has one section over 18 meters, which is the only part awarded a grant for cladding. Under the proposed government loan scheme for cladding only, how are many able to afford £50 a month on top of other costs, plus the costs of all other necessary works? What could be even more than the cladding? This isn't help. This isn't levelling up. The impact of this crisis has been major for me, as I imagine for us all. I've been in torment for 2 years, but the last year has been particularly awful. I'm experiencing additional symptoms due to stress, exhaustion and anxiety, including being hospitalized due to unresponsive episodes lasting up to 12 hours, panic attacks and attending E&E 3 times. I know I'm not alone, and most, if not all of us, have found that our symptoms or conditions have worsened, or new ones manifested, whether disabled or not. For those who haven't heard of CLADAG, we are a leaseholder disability action group which recognises that disabled people are one group structurally disadvantaged. We're a campaigning and support group. As leaseholders, we also work with individuals, groups and organisations who are from, or campaign for those across housing tenures. We use the term disabled loosely, as many involved or who contact us don't explicitly use the term, so we use it broadly to be inclusive. We echo End Our Cladding Scandal's position, but seek to raise awareness of the additional ways disabled and older people are impacted. There are 4 main issues that CLADAG is campaigning on. 1. Evacuation and associated costs. 2. Many of us are on restricted or fixed incomes, which impacts our ability to fund remediation. 3. Some of our flats have been adapted to meet our needs, so it's harder to move elsewhere. For others, their homes are no longer accessible, but they are trapped and can't move. 4. Some leaseholders will have to move out temporarily when works make their home uninhabitable. Accessible alternative accommodation needs to be found and funded. We've recently undertaken a survey and we intend to share the data analysis soon. So for all in this mess and allies, it's important that even when it feels difficult, try and remember that this fight is far from over. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Georgie. That was really moving and a reminder for those of us in Grenfell that 40% of those people who died that night had mobility issues. And this is an issue that we all need to unite on to actually support those people who've been further discriminated against because of their disability or mobility issues. So I'd like to end today, which has been an absolutely amazing and inspiring day of protest right across the country. We've had a fantastic panel of speakers. I'd like to ask if any of the panel, especially Chloe or Jenny, would like to say something before we finish, or Tanya. So over to Chloe and then Jenny and then Tanya.
Thank you so much, Moyra, and thank you for chairing this incredibly inspiring day of action against the building safety crisis. Today was about direct action. Today was about disrupting business as usual. The sales office protests do just that, and people coming out onto the streets to demand change. If we can show more and more people doing that and taking action, the government will act more quickly and take more notice. We're using our power as people, and not only that, it feels good. It feels good to take action and to be doing something when in this situation where so many people feel so trapped and so powerless. So I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everybody who's engaging and active in the campaign.
Thanks, Chloe. And I guess just closing comments from me, I would just say solidarity to everyone that's joined today and everyone that's protesting. I think it's so important that we all realise that we're all in this together. The End Our Cladding Scandal campaign uses the hashtag Stronger Together quite a lot, because I know personally when I first realised I was part of this crisis, it felt so overwhelming to just feel like you're battling it all on your own. And I think just for me, although I personally very much understand that there are days where everything feels like it's getting on top of you and you're not going to see a way out, I think just please remember that there's so many people pushing to get justice for this, and we are seeing changes. The more and more we push, the more the media is putting pressure on the government, the more the government is starting to engage. And I genuinely do believe that we will get there at the end of this. It's just got to take time and keeping the pressure up. So thank you so much to everyone that's listened today.
Thank you, Jenny. Tanya?
Hi, Moyra. I'm just so inspired by what I've seen today, and it's a real pleasure. And I've got to say that Homes for All will continue to offer whatever support we can to the campaign, and we'll keep promoting, and we'll keep helping to organise. So thanks ever so much to Action for Fire Safety Justice for working with us, and we look forward to continuing.
Thank you, Tanya. Can I just carry on from what Tanya said by asking people to please contribute to the Action for Fire Safety Justice crowdfunder. You know, this fight is going to continue. And I'd like to send big thanks and solidarity to all the local groups who've worked incredibly hard to make this such an amazing and successful day of action, and to End Our Cladding Scandal, to CLADAC, to the FBU, to Homes for All, Grenfell United, and the Developer Action for Fire Safety Justice, who organised this day of action. Today we have, through our collective organising, we have made the government and the developers sit up and listen, and we will continue to do that. There's an opportunity as well for people to carry on the discussion at the next Homes for All general meeting on Saturday the 13th of November. Also, please check out the Action for Fire Safety Justice Facebook page. It's also worth going on to the UK Cladding Action Group and to End the Cladding Scandals websites. Also, the buildingsafetycrisis.org has carried out details of all the protests that are in place and what's happening with regard to the polluter pays bills. It's quite a huge amount, so hopefully actually that gives you some indication of where you can find out information. We are a growing movement with one clear aim: to make our buildings safe. Join us to hold this government and the developers to account for the devastation of our health and the housing crisis, and to make the developers pay. And that includes a call from the Grenfell community to make those responsible accountable for the loss of those 72 plus lives. So thank you very much, everyone, and onwards and upwards, keep fighting. We will keep joining you in the action that you take. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.